is the Business of Reselling podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Oman. It's time for the Business of Reselling podcast, episode 27. This is another by request episode, and the timing of it is absolutely perfect because this Thursday, May 25th, I will be hosting a networking room at the eBay Summer Seller Check-in, and I'll be talking about this exact category. So it's going to be about finding a new niche, or maybe more looking at whether niches or niches, sorry for my American viewers. I'm going to say niche because it just works better for me. So I know maybe it'll sound weird for you, but that's what I'm using. Whether niches are better as far as keeping focus on your business and selling in narrow categories for more profitability, or whether it's better to just sell whatever makes money and go broad. So that's what I'll be talking about today. And I'll be following up on some of those ideas at the eBay Summer Seller Check-in on Thursday. So I've put a link in the show notes to register for it. It is, of course, free. And my networking my networking room will be, what is it called? It's called Find Another Niche, Pivoting Your eBay Business for Continued Success. So find that networking room. It's at the end of the check-in program, and come hang out with me live, and I'll answer all your questions. So before we get to that, though, I do have to follow up, as promised, on the whole Canadian tax calculating cost of goods sold and inventory valuation thing. And I'll tell you guys right now, you're not gonna like what I'm gonna say, but I did talk to my CPA friend, and we talked about how to value inventory and how traditional methods simply cannot work for our type of business. So one of the things that we discussed was how there's different ways to look at inventory and to value it in any type of business. And it can be looked at as what's called work in process, and it can be called or finished goods. And so some companies have inventory that's considered a work in process, and then it moves to finished goods. And those are two different ideas, or two different lines on the balance sheet. So we could mirror this in reselling by considering our unlisted inventory as work in process and our listed inventory as finished goods. So it would be kind of a rough parallel. And then you could value your finished goods as your inventory. However, this method isn't necessarily accurate for all of the reasons that I talked about in the episode and that have come up in questions on the YouTube channel. So if you want to go back to that episode 25 and listen to that one if you missed it, I won't get into all of the context again here. But anyway, so you can value the inventory as what you paid for it. The CRA allows for that. Or you can value it as finished goods, or the value of the inventory available for sale. That is also acceptable. One or the other may work better for you from a tax perspective, but only your accountant can really advise you on this. Now, her comments, and she was very careful to say that this is not tax advice, so I will be as well, simply stated that the typical formula for cost of goods sold, which is starting inventory value plus purchased inventory value minus sold inventory, will not have a direct application to our type of business, or it's just impossible to calculate in any accurate way. So I left that conversation with an unsatisfactory answer that I must now pass on to you, and just tell you again that the best way is to determine a method that makes logical sense for your business and the way you sell, and then run that by your accountant to see if there are any red flags. So there is my super non-answer. She always likes to remind me that I shouldn't be giving tax advice. And I don't think that I have, but I do want to be careful not to walk that line. Anyway, that's where we're at. If you continue to have questions, do not hesitate to ask them. You're never bugging me. Somebody suggested that maybe they would be bugging me or pressing the issue too hard. You're absolutely not. I think it's wonderful that we have these questions for each other, and it helps us all become better sellers. However, I can't leave you with a this is how to do it answer to that question in particular. All right, let's move on to today's content. So the question I got on YouTube was, what's your point of view on niches and whether I feel it is better to sell whatever is profitable or stick to one niche? Okay, this is such a cool question because it goes back to my days as a business consultant and professor. and where I used to talk about this idea of the ideal customer and how to choose a narrow focus on your business that best appeals to that person. So I'll get to that in a second. But if you look at my store at storagewarrior.ca, you're going to see a huge variety of items. I think we have 28 different categories that we sell in. However, if you listen to the podcast, you will also hear me talk about becoming successful by selling a lot of items in a limited category. So, for example, getting a huge collection of Barbie dolls, which you've heard a lot about the last couple of months. So, these realities might look a little bit contradictory. I have talked about niching down and selling in limited categories, and yet I sell in 28 different categories. So, I'm going to sort of talk about those two approaches and sort of hopefully resolve that for you today. So, let's get to this idea in business called the ideal customer. So, again, I used to teach this in my business planning and business writing courses. So, the ideal customer concept, the ideal customer is a person who, if you could only have one customer and just replicate them as many times as you want until you had all the money that you ever wanted, who would they be? What do they look like? Where do they live? What is their income? What kinds of things do they enjoy? What do they value? How do they make buying decisions? Everything that you can think of about this person, and then you just clone them. And the reason that I would teach business planning in this way is because what happens a lot with entrepreneurs is we get pulled in a million different directions when we're trying to start and grow a business. We're like, oh gosh, I saw this business over here doing this type of marketing, and oh, that looks really cool, and maybe it will work for my business. And oh, I saw these guys over here, and they're selling, I don't know, magazines, and they're killing it in magazines. Maybe I should sell magazines. And we get like, we see what other people are doing and we're like, oh my gosh, oh, where do I go? Which direction do I go in? And so the idea of the ideal customer kind of reins you in and helps you think about, like, well, who do I really want to be selling to? Like, who is it? If I could just define them and create an avatar for them. And once you have a sense of that person, that perfect customer, you can use that avatar to help you make more focused decisions in your business. So, in contrast to the ideal customer is sort of the general market, the type of business like the Walmarts of the world. We sell anything and everything. We have all kinds of different kinds of customers. We don't worry about niching down. That's just, you know, it's we just will sell whatever. And businesses like Walmart can be very successful by not having an ideal customer because they can compete on price better than any other company pretty much in the world. So if you can take something like price and become the market leader in it, then you don't need to have a specific customer avatar because most of us are always chasing the best price. And if you're a company like Walmart, you can deliver that. Now, as small businesses, we cannot and should not ever compete on price. So that's out. So, what do we want to compete on? Well, it's about who we want our customers to be. So, instead of just throwing a bunch of business ideas at the wall, like, spaghetti and watching to see what sticks, we think about the type of person that we really want to be working with, figuring out what their desires are, and trying to serve that up to them. So when I used to teach this, I teach my students to consider all aspects of their business in the context of this one person and make decisions based on how to add value to them most. Now, it's a very limiting concept, and I acknowledge that because we can't just have one customer, obviously, and the range of customers we're going to have, they will have variations in their characteristics. They won't all be exactly like this one ideal person, but they may be similar enough that we can think about them when we're considering how to market our business, what kinds of products to sell, what our branding should look like, what platform to be reselling on, and ask ourselves, is this where they are likely to be? And is this where they're likely to find me? And is it where I'm going to find them? So, your ideal customer might be a collector of comic books or Barbie dolls, or they might be someone who just loves browsing great vintage items and comes back to your store simply because of the variety that you have and they think that that's interesting. Or it might be somebody who aligns with particular values that also resonate with you and your brand. Maybe these are environmental values, or maybe you support the same causes or whatever. Um, but it's worth sitting down and, if you can, evaluate the customers that you already have, or if that's too difficult or you're too new in your business to know, then develop instead a definition or an avatar of what an ideal customer looks like to you. Now, if you've been in business for a while, you have ways to nurture your repeat customers. You can start putting together an email list and inviting your buyers to join it, and talk to them through your email list and ask them to reply, ask them questions, survey them, and try to find out what they want. You could be so proactive as to send your buyers a message and ask them what they loved most about their experience with you. And once you have some data and you can find similarities in their statements of their experiences, that can give you an idea of what kinds of customers are coming to you. And then you can start to build your ideal customer avatar based on that information. Now, again, if you don't have that information or any way of getting information about why people buy from you, that's okay. You can just think about who you would really like to be buying from you and define them in as detailed a manner as you can. And of course, that is going to evolve over time, right? You might start off with what you think your ideal customer is going to be, and then find that over time, their characteristics change a little bit. And that's absolutely fine. It's never set in stone. But once you have that, even if it's very rudimentary, now consider, what do they want? Now, here's the value of niching. The value of niching is that if you sell a narrow product variety, you can really develop deep trust with people who buy those same items. And you can become sort of the de facto expert or trusted seller in that category. And if you want to, build an entire brand around it. And that can be extremely successful. So at some point, you are like the person who knows die-cast cars, and you are like one of the country's experts, and you have the best inventory, and you know exactly how to describe the items, and you know exactly how to take pictures so that the buyers never have any questions because you've already pre-answered them in your listing. People trust you. Repeat buyers come back to you, and obviously that's going to be really successful for you because you can just focus your sourcing strategies on getting those same types of items. You can develop more efficient systems and processes for shipping and for listing, and so that will absolutely help you build efficiency in your business. And efficiency is something I talk about a lot as being very important for scaling. Now, in my business, that kind of looks like having a lot of listings in just a few categories. So we have our 3 or 4 categories where if I want to say we're experts or we're close or becoming experts, those are sort of the main categories that we sell in and where we nurture our repeat buyers. That's also where our most efficient listing processes are, what the things that we can list the fastest, and the things that we make money on because we know exactly how to source them and how much to pay. Now, and I mean we as in all of you, not just me, we can do this really well as resellers because if you sell comics and diecast and records and Barbie dolls, people are most likely just browsing the one category that they're interested in. So it's nice that these reselling platforms that we use have these categorization features that we can use to kind of focus in and attract those certain types of buyers just to that category. They might not ever look at the rest of our store. So I think our systems for comic books are very efficient. We're very fast. We're fast at taking the photos. We're fast at grading visually. We have all of that nailed down. We almost never have complaints in the comic book category. We're still getting better in other categories, but we're also very good at a few more. And in those categories, I use eBay's tools to keep track of repeat buyers. I send them coupons. I try to give them things that I think they want based on their buyer behavior. And I also invite all of those people to join my email list in a way that does not undermine eBay policy. And once they're on the email list, then I can send them messages directly and I can do surveys and find out what they're looking for. So we do have a few niches. But this is something to be careful of, especially as you scale, that you don't do this in too many categories because it's going to eventually stretch you very thin. You can't be an expert in 200 different categories. Sourcing becomes less efficient. You're all over the place looking for stuff. Listing processes vary too much from category to category. You need a wider variety of shipping supplies, et cetera, et cetera. So going broader will decrease your efficiency. So that kind of means that if you want to stay broad, you're sort of better to scale up and get staff and support in specific categories so that you are not the one who's spread into 200 different categories, try to become the de facto expert in every single one. It's like a grocery store has a produce manager, a bakery manager, a dairy manager. Like there's a reason for that. These areas have to be broken down. Otherwise, efficiency just completely goes out the window. So now let's talk about the other side of this, and that's the value of having ideal customers who are aligned with your brand or your values. So these people aren't so much about your specific products, but they love you and your business and they support you for other reasons. These people are the kind of people who buy swag and merchandise from you if you sell it, and you can create another revenue stream out of that. So think American Pickers, their brand Antique Archaeology and their sub brand Two Lanes. Very popular. They sell tons of merchandise through their website, and they've developed sort of a brand around like the lifestyle and the freedom of their branding and what Mike does, and the other people on the show. So they don't have like a niche of products that they sell, but people want to follow their adventures. They're aligned with the way that they work, and that helps amplify their message and helps them bring in even more customers that way. So in reality, I mean, one is probably not more successful than the other, but it is very hard to do both. So it is worthwhile to do the exercise of sitting down and thinking about who your ideal customer is or who you would like them to be and how you can serve them better before you decide which way to go on that road. Now, one risk of niching, if you go that way, is if the category you sell in becomes saturated, demand decreases, or the bottom falls out of it in some other way. Think about like collector plates and Wedgwood and lots of bone china, most kinds of dolls, beanie babies. Ugh, do I need to go on? There are resellers all over the internet and Facebook groups, and I see them every single day, who continue to sell in categories that are absolutely dead and wring their hands daily about why they are no longer selling well in those categories while simultaneously refusing to pivot. So be realistic. Don't marry yourself to one single category. If you choose to niche, that's great. You can do very, very well with it. Be aware that there's always a risk to doing that. And think about what your plan B might be if you take the niche route. Have some ideas in place to shift into new, more popular categories as buyer behavior changes and as your ideal customer evolves, as well as keep the willingness to learn new categories. This is never a set it and forget it type of business, despite some YouTubers who will tell you that it is. It is always difficult to do very, very well, and we have to be constantly learning. As far as the business plan for Storage Warrior goes, I've already mentioned we have our 4 or 5 categories that we do really well in, and we continue to become more known for. Our comics, our Barbies, our diecast are our largest categories. And Barbies are brand new, right? We just, 2.5 months ago, I couldn't have told you much of anything about Barbie dolls. And now I'm having arguments with people in forums over whether somebody's twist and turn 1967 or like, a number 7 ponytail or whatever. And it's like all of a sudden I know these things. So I'm still learning, but loving that category. And I think that could become an expert in it in the long run. So anyway, however, we will sell most items that are profitable. However, when we pick outside of our expert categories, we do try to get things that we know will sell fast based on our prior experience. However, admittedly, we screw this up a lot because, we're always learning. And, we check the eBay sold ratios. We try to if we don't know a lot about something, we try to do a quick amount of research before we buy. But because we buy in bulk, as you know, and we acquire things at such a low price, we really have lots of great opportunities to just buy stuff that we know nothing about and figure it out later. And I'm completely comfortable with that. I'm also comfortable with the inefficiency that goes with it, because it's one of the things about the business that makes me the most excited. So the trade off is acceptable for me. So I would say like Storage Warrior is more of like the antique archaeology brand. We connect with people who are interested in our lifestyle, in recycling, in keeping things at a landfill, and rescuing cool and interesting items. So that is my answer to that question. Call to action today would be, what is your opinion on niches versus selling in broad categories, and what has worked best for you and why? Leave a comment on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe at youtube.com/@StorageWarriorPodcast. And leave a comment and let me know what niches have worked great for you. Which fork in the road, which way do you want to go on the fork in that road? Next episode, be in a couple of weeks. I have a recap on an exciting road trip that we're about to do. So for now, just make sure that you're signed up for the 2023 Summer Seller Check-in. That is happening this Thursday, May 25th. I believe the networking rooms start at 1 p.m. Pacific. So it's a nice, easy time, hopefully, for a lot of people. Don't forget to register for that, and we will talk to you next time.